Hey folks, how are we all? And welcome to another episode. Something different today. We're going to talk about bike fitting, and we're going to do this with my beautiful wife in the background. So we're going to get straight to it. So it's a little bit of an experiment, let's say, little bit of something that is going to have more outtakes than intakes, let's say. But I'm going to go through a number of things. We're going to talk about contact points. Your ass, your hands, your feet a little bit. But the thing is, I'm going to give you solutions to a number of issues that I see. So we're going to talk about the bike fit itself. And I'm going to do it in the studio. You can see over there, I've got a broom handle, I've got a tape measure, and that's it. I'm going to share with you lots of knowledge, 30 years of working in the industry. But what I want to do in this session is give you some ideas that you can replicate at home, give you some real simple things, okay? So I'm guessing that most of you might have a broom handle, you might have a broom on the end of it. Don't worry about that, you can still use this. So I'm going to give you lots of little tips, and I'm going to talk about things in terms of a beginner through to an advanced. So don't switch off if you think, I know everything, I've had a number of bike fits. Remember, my bike fitting started off in the early 90s, and I've seen so much development. And yes, I've got lasers, 3D analyzing tools, measuring devices that you wouldn't believe how accurate they are. But the thing is, I believe that most people can get themselves set up to a degree on their bike. Now, the first thing that you've got to understand is there is a bike fit window for everybody. That window is big or it's small. But the most common reasons that I see people who come to me are they're in pain. They're in pain, they're getting discomfort. Sometimes on the contact point, your ass, your feet, or your hands. But then there'll be another point, maybe your neck, or more commonly, your knee. And the thing is, I want you to think for the next 20, 30 minutes about the kinetic flow of energy through your body. And there is a point in everyone that it jams, it's blocked. Not one single person is totally efficient. From the very first day you take your first steps, you're a little bit imbalanced. Maybe you're already set up for failure. You've got one foot longer than the other. Yeah, you've got one arm longer than the other. You've got one ear longer than the other. There's something going on that's unique to you. So the full spectrum of a bike fit starts with you, your posture, your flexibility, your range of movement, okay, your mobility, your stability, because we can really work on that. Sure, we can make some adaptations to the bike, but normally based on the size. So people often say, yeah, but a pro can take discomfort, wants to go faster, I want to get aero. That's bullshit, okay? You're not a pro. And remember, any pro that you see on the TV has gone through bike fits probably since they were 14, 16, 18, several a season. Most bike fits that the pro do are on a time trial bike because they want to go aero. We have 3 pillars that we talk about: aero, power, comfort. I asked a number of people over a month who came into my studio. 9 out of 10, there was only one rider who said that they weren't interested in comfort, and they had been through a number of bike fits and wanted to go fast on a short time trial. Comfort is king. If you get comfortable on your bike handling skills go up. You will go faster. So the other things will come. It's like when I talk about fitness. Drive up your health, drive up your weight control, and fitness is a byproduct. Don't have it as the first and only thing. You want to get dived into it. Now, before I do, I need to share something with you. You need to understand that I'm going to be taking questions and follow-up sessions inside my Skool page. You can scan that link there, and that will take you to the page for free, because I'm going to be doing a number of these, and this is just the first basic one. Shall we get things going? Okay, so first thing is broom handle. I'm going to be using this to point, not poke at my wife. By the way, she's not going to talk, okay? So please, no questions, okay? She will laugh and she'll screw things up from time to time because we've made this so natural that we haven't practiced anything. Now, my wife is on a new journey. She's a runner and she's just stopped running for a little bit. And what we're going to do is do some cycling challenges. She's going to do a ramp test, then an FTP test. She doesn't know what they are. So that'll make good footage. She's then going to do a hill climb challenge, and then we've got some distance challenges, 50 kilometres and then 50 miles. And we're going to have a go at beating her time we set on the hill climb. It's only half a mile long, but it's got an average of 14%. Okay? Right, so the first thing is, I don't want to spend too much time talking about saddle height, but if Sharon climbs off, we've got a pelvis to demonstrate, okay? Sharon's going to climb off the bike. Okay, so we're going to do this session in training shoes as well. We'll talk about cleats in another video. So the standard is, don't, okay, spend loads of time using formulas and equation inside seam and such, unless you're in a bike fit studio. So finding the top of the femur, little knobbly bit, yeah, you can put your finger on it. That probably hurts Sharon because she's a runner. And you measure, if Sharon goes around the other side for me, to the saddle. You can start by measuring that against and have the saddle height. Sharon climbs on. Now, we've already done this, but I would have everybody slip their shoe off, place their heel on the bottom of the pedal until they can get that full extension, okay? Then put the shoe on and we get that slight bend. Now, we can talk about the angles in the knee in another video because there's a couple of things going on, right, that mean that you've got to be super careful when you're setting up the saddle. Now, Sharon has got long legs, long, beautiful legs. However, if Sharon brings her foot up, okay, stops there, femur length is super important. If you have a long femur, you may find that you're pushing your saddle back, okay? Now, if your saddle is further away, sorry, Sharon, if you climb off again. If your saddle, okay, is further away, okay, we've set this bike up in the middle. If your saddle's further away, you may find that your glute doesn't fully work. And what I mean by that is it becomes deactivated. That sounds horrendous, coach. Deactivated glute. Does Tom Cruise come in and activate it? No. What I mean is that too far back, okay, when you come onto the top of the pedal stroke, you may push through. So you may kick through the pedal stroke. Kicking through, I call it the kung fu pedal stroke. And I see so many riders come into the studio, they've got a layback seat post, that might be you, rather than an inline. So if it's straight, it's in line. It's got a little bend on the top, it's layback. And it's trying to give you more room. Why is this happening? Because bike companies want to get more people on their bike. They want to try and open up one size for their bike, okay? So you've got to be careful of that. Do you think you're too far back? Well, you may have deactivated glutes. So tip number one, every time you go on your bike, I mean every time, indoors, outdoors, you do 10 body squats. Push your ass out all the way down. And then at the top, squeeze your ass cheeks. Switch your glute on. Now we'll do some exercises, especially in school. We're going to share some bridging, some hip work, some pelvic work, some posture work, all of that. I've got a little injury at the moment, so we're delaying a little bit of that. Okay, so we've set this up in the middle, but if we go too far back, because you think, oh, I've not got enough room here, it's probably because you've got your saddle at the wrong height. Every time we bring the saddle forward, we get into an aggressive position and we're going to roll our pelvis off the front, get more power. However, it affects, if Sham climbs back on, every time we move saddle forward and back from the height position that we've decided, we change the height. And what we do is we change the position, the length, from the femur, top of the femur, all the way to the cleat. And that distance is super important, okay? Now this is going to be affected by the length of the crank as well. So I'm a big believer in a shorter crank. I've seen it be so helpful, especially for riders over the age of 40, 50. As soon as we lose that little bit of flexibility, having that shorter crank. So when Sharon brings her foot up to the top, okay, in this position, as we pass through, you come onto the drops, Sharon, we're going to be interacting with the hip flexor. Now, as a runner, okay, her hip flexor's not bad. She's quite flexible there, but you can see in cycling, we really close that off. So a lot of people have deactivated glutes, and their hip flexor is far too tight. And all they need to do is start a few stretches on their quads and hip flexors, and they could just change the whole dynamics of their cycling, because you're probably one of the people who have not only got one saddle, but you've got 2, 3. You've tried so many different saddles because your ass can't take the saddle you've got on. My saddle's too wide, it's too soft, it's too hard, it's the wrong shape. It's not the wrong shape, it's the position you have it in. So 9 times out of 10, I will see saddles too high and saddles in the wrong fore-aft position. Now here's what you do. You take the saddle, okay, once you're comfortable that you're no higher than the top of the femur, you play around with it, you make one movement at a time. If you go down, you record it, and you don't ever move it any more than 5 millimeters. 5 millimeters. And you give yourself the opportunity to ride at least 5 times and see what that feels like. And then what would happen is you would make the movements forward and backwards. Now, if we look at, just put my broom handle down. If we look at the pelvis, obviously, sorry Sharon, if you come off again. On, off. She's so good at that. Step away from the saddle, step away from the saddle. Now, from the back of the saddle, I always talk about the 12 millimeter mark. I would have everybody, if you're doing this at home, take 12 millimeters, okay? Sorry, 12 millimeters, 12 centimeters, okay? Measure 12 and make a mark on your saddle. Most saddles, apart from an Adamo saddle, a split nose time trial saddle, this will be the point whereby it starts to curve in, even on a short nose saddle, and that's the point where your pelvis wants to sit naturally. Okay, and that's where it wants to sit. Now you can measure your own ass by sitting on some flour. You know, put it on a table, plonk your butt down, and you'll get 2 nice cheek marks. Yeah, it's super simple. Measure center to center. Most of you are going to fall between 120 and 130 from middle to middle, and that will put you on roughly 140 saddle. Okay? And that's roughly how we do it. Most saddles will accommodate most people, but if you're really narrow and you're on a really wide saddle, like 145, 147, 150, you're never going to get that position. That's the only time where you would be looking at the saddles. Saddles come in basically 3 types, and it's all to do with the hip support at the back. And what they're trying to do is to push your pelvis up at the back, because they know that you're a lazy-assed sitter, and when you sit, you collapse and you shrug and you collapse through here, okay? You collapse through the pelvis. So that's what they do. They're trying to help you. But sometimes if there's too much rear lift on the saddle, it pushes you forward and you think your saddle's never level and you're always falling off the front, okay? Right, okay, so play around with your saddle. Tiny movements. So if you're moving forward, 5 millimeters, 5 rides. Backwards, 5 millimeters, 5 rides. Give it a go, okay? Only 5 millimeters at a time. One movement, and then let it settle in. Right, Sharon, you climb back on. So, if Sharon climbs on, what I mean by that collapsing is, I see a lot of even bike fitters tell the rider, okay, we're throwing money away now. So if Sharon extends, so push your back out. So this position here, when we actually extend through the spine, you see here, okay, you would think, oh, it's a really good posture position. But what we actually want to do is when we sit, okay, we want to try and roll the pelvis around a little bit, actually bring it up a little bit, okay? And what this does is it helps engage the glutes and it will allow you to get more power, okay? So, obviously, we're only looking at beginner methods today. We'll get a little bit more advanced. But what I want you looking here is Sian's chin and torso. So, this chin and torso gives us a good idea how you are set up for your bike, because a lot of pressure is going to come through the spine, okay? And what's going to happen is your head is 4 to 5 kilograms in weight. It's really heavy. And if you stick your chin out, okay, we start to get a little bit of hinging through cervical thoracic. Okay, so what we want to try and do is relax here, roll your pelvis up, okay, and then take a little bit of bend through the arms. And then what happens is our head, okay, she looks not for widescreen TV, chin up, there, creates this gap. You're always aware. So what we used to say is spine and head, okay, is there's a balloon going off the top of the head, and you imagine this balloon is pulling the back of your head. So next time you're on the bike, you're trying to, rather than there, oh, what a lovely view, because you're actually hinging through the neck here. You want to try and look through the top of your eyes, okay? So in that position. Now, let's look and check the biggest problem with your bike. It's too long. Top tube, okay? So if Shannon sits up, stays on the saddle. So the best test that I would do in the studio is, first of all, I would measure you. We would go height, shoulders, torso, inside seam. We'd look at femur length and such. We can't do that, and you haven't got that access at home. So what you've probably done is taken your height, and then you've gone on to a chart. You've maybe gone on to something like Giant, BMC, or Bear, Cervelo. You've looked at their chart and you thought, fuck me, okay? How am I going to fit on that bike? Now, I'm 5'10". I've never ridden anything more. 52, I do have a 53. My time trial bike is a 50. Now, that blows people away because they're shorter than me and they're riding 54s. Okay, bike sizing has changed a great deal, especially with the introduction of aero bikes, the angling and such. But if Shan just does the normal, hands out in front of her, okay, so when you're sitting on your bike, okay, and what she does is she falls forward now onto the handlebars, grabs the hoods. Now we've set this up. Sharon, like me, she's got long arms, okay? It helps when you're in the shop and you're trying to reach all the alcoholic and dirty magazines on the top shelf. Sharon's trying not to laugh now, but anyway. If you can, drop your hands onto your hoods. Your bike is too long. Sharon can do this again in a better idea. Can you do that thing where we talked about doing the hands behind you and doing like a lean forward? Now, Sharon's quite strong in the core. She can get to there, put her hands down, and she can reach nicely. And you can see she's got that bend on her arms. Now, Sharon's going to show you something now. Go down into the drops. Okay, so back up to climbing position, hold the bars, push your arms. What's Shan's shoulder position? Okay, now onto the hoods. Okay, do you see what happened there? So they reached forward, so the bike became longer. Okay, now onto the drops. You see what happened there? The bike became shorter. So riding on the drops is actually decreasing the reach of a bike. Most of you don't ride on the drops because you think it's too low. Okay, it's too low, I haven't got the flexibility for it. Might be that you've just slammed your stem or you've reduced it too much, or the bike that you have is too low because you've bought an aero bike. The stack height of a bike is super important. So if you're indoors and you can alter that and bring it up, in fact, have the saddle and the bars level to start with, you may actually find that you'll have more comfort and you'll be able to go faster. But surely if I want to go faster, coach, I go lower on the front because it makes me more aero. That is a myth. I don't know where that has come from, okay? It's maybe from the pro game, right? It's an old 1980s type thing. It doesn't work that way. We'll do aero chat in another video when we've got different angles and we go on the front. So, can you do that on the front? Can you reach your hoods? Because if you can't reach them, your bike's too long. So no matter how much flexibility you've got, it's always going to be too long. If Sean comes back into the hoods, that's it. Now what you want to be able to do, kid on, you're playing the piano, Sean. Yeah? So if you've seen some videos of me and I talk about playing the piano, you should be able to do anything with your arms. Where are you steering the bike from? You're steering the bike with your ass. Your arms here, okay, are always nice and loose, nice and loose. Now, if Sharon tenses her arms, what muscle comes under pressure? What muscle are you feeling? Tricep probably. I can feel it there. Triceps already tensed up and your triceps beginning to overwork. There is a thing what we call lactate flushing. If muscles come under tension through the upper body and we've got lactate returning from lower limbs, you're actually going to fatigue faster. Also, when we tense up because the bike's too long, you create extra tension through the neck and will increase this cervical thoracic hinging. So I would always put a sticker on someone's bike, little tiny dot sticker, maybe on one of the hoods, and that sticker is your turbo button. But when you press it, you remember, oh, pelvis, chin. If your chin is way out in front, you're going to hinge, okay, and you're going to have a problem through your neck, okay? What can you do to counter that? You can reduce your stem. So people will always ask me, how short can I go in the stem? And the thing is, it's how much do you love the bike? I've put people on 60mm stems on a road bike. To me, that's about the limit, okay? But it depends. You may say, look, coach, I'm not going that fast. I'm not going downhill at 50, 60 kilometers an hour or even miles an hour. So what happens, the shorter it becomes, the faster the reaction is. People may say it becomes twitchy. It starts to vibrate and shake at high speeds. But you've got to be going super fast for that to happen. But it is the maneuverability. A road bike should glide and you should feel at one with it. A mountain bike, we want it short. We want to be able to have fast movement, okay? But if you're changing the cockpit, the length of the stem so that you can get the reach, I promise you, there's other shit going on in the bike that's more importantly out of kilter. You'll have heard the term micro and macro adjusters, like in life. What's your personality like? Yeah? Do you react really badly, okay, to adversity? It takes you a long time to get over your football team, your rugby team, your cricket team not doing so well. Takes you a really bad time to get over a bad meal or a short time. You're maybe a macro adapter or a micro. Tiny little movements in your life, they throw you out. You can't cope. Who the hell put the milk on the left-hand side of the fridge? And your life's over. But the thing is, if you're sensitive to change, it might be a good thing because you're picking up before injuries kick in. If you ride your bike and you get an ailment, you get an injury, you get an ache or a pain that doesn't exist when you're off your bike, that is a biomechanical issue from your bike. If your knee hurts 24/7, you've got a functional problem with your knee that you need to fix, okay? Most people get to a point where the bike is causing them the problem. That's what will take them to the bike fitter. But there are still things that you can do first of all, okay? So what I want you to do, if Sharon comes off, okay? So, and what I'm going to get Sharon to do, so we haven't done this before, okay, we're going to swing our arms. I'm going to use the pole, so stand as if your hands down. Imagine you're coming home and you know, you've just been shopping, you've bought yourself a load of new tops, okay, you've got like lovely clothes, right? Okay, and all we do is we grab the pole, okay, so straight arms, nice and straight. So you can do this at home, you can just grab the pole, okay, and what will happen is thumb and first finger, okay, they'll make a mark, and we can measure between that mark. Now for Sharon, I know it's 36, okay, we know that on her road bike, we've actually presently got 38s, but I know that a 36, okay, would help her, okay? Dead easy way to do it. Now, if Sharon just swings her hands forward and backwards, and if you do that, and then put your thumbs up the top, okay? Keep them straight. So straight there. And what you can do is from the thumbs, you can do the same thing. You can measure, okay? You can get a bar width. Now, most people, go and look at your bars, they're probably 42 or 44. And what happens is, that puts you slightly outside of the reach of a natural arm drop. And that again, if you can swim, can you go back on please, Sam? Thanks. If you swim and do breaststroke, what happens when you're doing breaststroke? Your head comes up. So as soon as you open your arms up, your chin's coming away. Ah, my chin's coming away. But if my chin comes away, what happens? Chin and torso distance increase. More hinging, just from a straight bar. So when you put your hands on, now I've deliberately put these are 44s, so they're really wide. When we do some aero work, I'll put some cameras on the front. I want you to have a little look at your hands. Okay, so when Shan puts them down, she's rolling her fingers round. So the thumb's not actually in a good position. So we have L. If they're too wide, you'll collapse. We've got ulnar and medium nerves. So let's say that your little finger gets a little bit numb. Okay, that means that you're in a chopping position and you've blocked, jammed, crushed, too much pressure on that ulnar nerve. Maybe from the ring finger through to your trigger finger, that goes numb. That's maybe the medium nerve, and that's where maybe there's a little bit of wrist movement. So, too long puts us here, and you normally get the loser, okay? Your wrist collapse into a loser position. Now think about that, you've just stretched the nerve. If you do that movement right now, put your hands out and then bring your hands back, and you'll feel that stretch and that tension. If your bars are too narrow, and I've yet to see anyone, unless it's a track bike, with bars too narrow, what will happen is you will come inwards and you will round the top. Now, again, people will say, but a pro rides with a 38 or a 36 and they're really wide. The bars are the widest point of the bike. So in a group race, if we're in a peloton, we want the bars really narrow because it stops us interfering. But you'll never, in fact, see a pro there, okay, with that wide arm. Never, ever, okay? It is the worst position for over. So basically, your bike's now too long, your saddle's far too far back, and your bars are too wide. But coach, I've only got a 52. It doesn't matter, okay? That bike alone is probably too big for most people. So the change of a bar is something that is obviously an equipment change, okay? And if you're seriously struggling with a lot of neck pain, it probably is the bar. So what can you do? Get someone to take a photograph of you from front on and see what position you're in. Look at your wrists. So when you're out riding, you know that you should be changing hand positions. What happens when you're on the hoods, even if you've got the correct bars? Do you get lazy and just collapse all the time? Oh, I see the pros doing that and they just lean. They're narrow bars. They're not on 440s, okay? They're narrower, right? So keep changing your hand positions. I would have everybody practice to get into the drops, to get really snug, pulled into the drops. You should have, okay, when you're on the hoods, a 90-degree bend in your elbow. Not out here, okay? Reaching like you're pushing a lawnmower, right? So that can help hand positions massively. Now, when we get through the knee is the #1 culprit of pain for a lot of cyclists. Did you know, before we look at the knee, that the majority of cyclists have a mobility and stability issue? If we take stability through the knee as well, you've got 4 quadriceps, okay? And they're developing through cycling. We've talked about fibre recruitment. We've talked about, okay, how you're recruiting more fibres as you get fitter, more fast twitch, more slow twitch. You've actually maybe even starting to see a little bit of muscle coming through. Well, at the back, you've got this pissy little hamstring, okay? The quadriceps job is to straighten the leg. Hamstring, bend the leg, at the knee. Most people who have knee problems is because their glute isn't strong enough. So what happens is the IT band comes under attack and it will pull the knee slightly. The knee gets pulled out of line, therefore it's tracking. Think of your knee, the patella, that you can feel the front of the knee. Bring that leg up for me, please. So the little patella and straight down. Relax, relax. So I can move this. Okay, a little bit wobbly, you probably might not be picking that up. But the patella slides. It's like a Skoelectric, it's like a railway track and a train. And it wants to move nicely up and down. As soon as the IT band starts to pull, boom, it comes out of line. As soon as the quadriceps starts to develop in that straight position and the hamstring pulls, it can come out of line slightly. All because people aren't stretching their hip flexor, the quadricep, the hamstring, a couple of minutes a day. And that is the biggest problem. Now, you're probably going to then talk about, hey coach, I've been told and I've seen on the internet, knee over pedal spindle. So if Sian puts her foot into what I would call peak torque, so again, we can't measure the peak torque unless we're on a proper machine. That peak torque may come through your power meter, and it's the angle where you're hitting the most power. For a lot of roadies, it's going to exist somewhere between 100 and 120 degrees. So the pedal spindle is obviously where the met head is. We'll go through all that when I talk about more advanced about cleat setup. But the end of the patella, now to find the end of the the femur, if you back pedal, Sian, go backwards for me. Place your hand on the patella finger and roll it around the side. Go backwards all the way around, keep going. And if you keep moving, you'll find a little, there she is, okay? You find a little gap, end of the femur, it just opens up. Now that point there to the pedal spindle, I see some people measuring from the patella. Now, you tell me what part of the muscle that is, okay? It's not, it's in here. However, if you come into position, Sian, for me, as she comes over, the whole concept of knee or COPS, knee over pedal spindle, is that if it sits in front of the pedal spindle and then you drive your foot down, that this hasn't got any stability through that pedal stroke and it's kind of banging into fresh air. It is a little bit of a silly concept, okay? So you may think I've got my saddle too far forward and my knees too far over the pedal spindle. It's more likely that your saddle's not the correct height, okay? And it's more likely that your muscular mobility, stability is way out, okay? So I would look at that first in terms of addressing this knee issue. Now, here's a thing that a lot of people don't look at is the way that you pedal. So when we're indoors, a lot of riders will come to me and say, oh, I've got real terrible knee pain. I'll say, okay, what's your cadence? Oh, what's that got to do with it? I do these Zwift sessions, Zwift races, that they're actually got their saddle too far back. They're kicking through the top of the stroke. They're not on top of the pedal stroke. Their crank arm's too long. The bike's too long. And what's happening is their cadence is around about 75 to 80 and the gearing is too much. So what happens is they end up over gearing and just creating too much loading through the knee. You should practice at any level you're at, beginner or advanced, to have a variable cadence on a lot of sessions. Higher, lower, but you know what your normal is. Your normal cadence should be what feels natural to you. Cadence is fitness. Oh, I can't ride at 85, coach. I can't ride at 90 because you're not really dialed into being able to change that around. And I'm talking about people who are getting into their 50s and older. It is so important that we have variable cadences and we start to play around with that. But you start to analyse your pedal stroke, get some video footage, start to look at it. We'll do some lasers in another video and we'll look at it at the front because people will say to me, oh, my Q factor's too wide and my knees fall in. That's not really a big issue. In fact, we can look at a whole school of riders, especially Italian riders, who will ride on what I call their big toe. If you try this next time and you're putting out a lot of power and you wiggle your big toe and you lean on your big toe and on the pad of the foot, your knees will fall inwards. If you're going to lose power, you want to lose it inwards. Okay, so sometimes your knees may drop, but it doesn't mean that it's going to cause great discomfort. Think of yourself as carrying 2 buckets of water. The water is full to the top and you've got to go over an assault course. And as you move, you start to move around and the water comes out. That's the loss of power. Okay? Now everybody loses power, but what you're trying to do is to try and keep it inside. the crank, the drive chain to push you forward. And that's where float, pedal and cleat interaction, shoe combination, the thickness, the composite, carbon, plastic, sole of a shoe, how that is all sort of built into improving speed. Not necessarily comfort, okay? So I would say search for comfort first, then you're going to add on aero gains, then you're going to add on power gains. They're going to come. But remember, no matter how much power you've got, speed is the number one metric, how fast you want to go. Because if you're investing time in a bike fit and power, etc., you want to go quicker. So less power, faster speed. That's where the magic is at. Right, there's loads more things that I want to go through. We want to talk a little bit about saddle discomfort. Sharon's on a saddle that would be regarded as a softer saddle. Saddles that I see, people who have got most discomfort on, are too soft. Basically, they're too soft. They're just in the wrong position as well. Soft saddles don't work, okay? They don't work, you know, full stop. You know, most saddles will work for you as long as they're wide enough, okay? Now, there's a couple of other things that we were going to talk about in terms of discomfort, but I think we've covered everything there, yeah? We've gone through ass pain, we've gone through wrist pain, we've gone a little bit through neck pain. Okay, so let me go through a couple of little measurements we've got time for. What time have we done? Done 36 minutes, folks. Let me just check on some of the chat. That was just like a quick introduction. Kudos to my wife. She's too much more patient than my wife. Oh, wife is losing interest. She's not got to cycle a little bit, so she hasn't. Okay, I would say, unless there's anything else that anyone wants me to go through, I would think that would be enough, yeah? What I'm going to do is cut this up and create little sections of it as well. So we'll bring Sharon's bike in. She is a female giant bike, yeah, a Bianchi bike, and we've manipulated that as best to fit her torso, okay? Saddle's a little bit higher so that it gives her control as well. And then what we're going to do as well is we're going to go through riding with flat shoes, and then we're going to go into cleats when we're ready. But we're not going to make that jump straight away. It's all about just having a little bit of fun first. But we'll do all the testing indoors on the watt bike, and we'll do the ramp test first. And we'll share that. We'll have a little chat, because some of the questions that Sharon will have about, you know, fitness tests, all the numbers, they'll be relevant for beginners as well. Okay? You're not going to talk, are you? Have a little pedal now. So Sharon can have a little pedal, and we'll go through. So basically, Sharon always thinks that her knee is the saddle is too low, and she wants to put it higher. And that may be common with you as well. But when the saddle is at the right height and it's not too high, she can move her pelvis forward and backwards and get a little bit more power. So when she moves off the front of the saddle, she can then enter into what I call a drive phase through the bottom. Yeah, let me go through that a second before we call it shop. Right, if you come to ease. So when Sharon's coming through the top of the pedal stroke, okay, and she enters into the peak torque, and then she goes through the slide phase. That slide phase, okay, in a standard position, glides like you're wiping your foot, okay? Can't quite see it there, but you're just wiping your foot. As you roll forward, and she sits off the front, let me go forward, okay? On the saddle, slide forward. As she then slides forward, and she comes more forward on the saddle, her foot drops, and she can drive through the stroke. So pedal on it, stay on the saddle, but you're sitting on the front of the saddle now. Slide forward, that's it. Lean down, good. So she can really drive through the pedal. So we've talked about this before in other videos, whereby you get into that position and then you can, almost like a sprinter coming out of the blocks, as you go through, you can drive. But in that float phase, that's super important. If you can't float through the bottom, and use the momentum to come back up, normally it's a sign that you've got, poor cleat pedal setup, but sometimes that your crank arm is too long. And it's time that if you're hinging through the top. Now, another thing I was going to say about your pelvis and your glutes, if you're finding yourself, you're getting a sore lumbar and your back's quite sore, but you think that your bike isn't too long, you think it's not too bad, it's normally a sign again that the glute, okay, is deactivated and your lumbar is helping to stabilize. What I mean by that is, there's your pelvis, okay? So as you're cycling, you've got this tiny little motion. And what happens is your body, like a camera, picks up and it wants to stabilize and keep everything still. Remember the 2 buckets of water I mentioned? If you're all over the place and losing water, you're losing power, okay? So what happens if the glutes are not doing their job, because that's their job, the lumbar kicks in and it tries to stabilize the pelvis. It's not strong enough. So it becomes fatigued and very, very stiff. You start stretching all over the place. Now, if you then are in a position whereby you're too long on the bike, your bars are too wide, you're putting so much pressure on that one area. Because guess what? Cycling is actually good for your back. It's actually really good. If you're in a nice bike that fits you, that momentum and the circular action of the pedaling is actually quite good for loosening up the back. Now, I know that seems alien to most people. Where we might have trouble is through thoracic, okay, because you're hunching up a lot and you need to have some extension work and work done through that. But remember, muscles work in antagonistic pairs. One muscle pulls and the opposite muscle pulls the joint back. So when you're in cycling, you actually have all this action going down here with prime muscles, and their partner muscle doesn't get the same level of workout. And when you're leaning over on the handlebars, you're in a position whereby, again, prime muscles are getting worked, but their partner muscles are not. So you have to compensate that with your off-the-bike work. And I guess that a lot of people, they just don't do that. They don't even wash their bike. I know, there are people out there that don't do that. They have other people do it for them. So, again, if you've got a lumbar issue, it may just be that you haven't done enough posture, pelvic work. And if you start to do that on a daily basis for 3 to 5 minutes, you'll fix all those ailments. And your bike is actually pretty good and it fits you pretty well. Okay, you probably have to watch that through a few times. There's probably something in there that hopefully helps you, okay? What I would like to do is to try and create some footage that helps people with pain, helps people improve comfort, helps people make a choice about a bike they're going to buy. You may be unsure with the charts and the sizes. Give you a couple of ways to look at that. One being the reach of the bike and where that comes in, not the top tube length, but the reach, and the stack height, how you can measure your own bike and see what position it's at, okay? I would always suggest if you are going to buy a bike, I know that you're going to do it online, you're going to get a better deal and you can use the chart. If you're comfortable with that, do it. But if you can get to your local bike shop, not only are you going to, have that interaction with someone who knows something about the bike, but you've also got the ability to bring it back because it is probably going to need a little bit of servicing at some point. So interact with your local bike shop, ask them questions. You might even have somebody there that can measure you and help you make that choice about what size. Always go a size down than a size up for obvious reasons. You can alter things, but you can't change the top tube length. Once it's set, you're playing around with the stem size, you're taking away the beauty of the bike. And please, word of warning, if you're buying a complete cockpit, so the stem and the handlebars all in one, carbon piece, you're spending over $300, $400, $500 on something like that, make sure you understand exactly what the length is, okay? What the length is to the end of the bar, okay? Okay, folks, I am going to call it a day there. Hopefully that was okay. What I'm going to do is jump into the Skool platform tomorrow, and then I'll pick up some questions. If you're watching this at another point on catch up, interact with Skool and make your questions. We're going to do a live session on bike fitting in the university page as well, whereby you can ask questions, all set on bike fitting. I'm not going to put it on YouTube because I would just be there all night, okay? Right, so no questions from this because we've just been all over the place. I'm going to drill the questions down into particular topics, i.e. the saddle, handlebars, pedals, cleats, so that we can be really specific. From this video, I'll take out little extracts for some shorter YouTube videos, but what I will do is I'll do uploads on particular areas where the questions come from, okay? I think that would be a better way. And again, I don't think there's anyone else maybe going live out there on the internet just to talk about things like this. I've tried to do it unscripted, just go through a few things as I'm helping my lovely wife, okay? My wife has a condition as well. Her eyesight's not very good, and that's how I ended up with her. If you're asking, how did he get such a beautiful wife like that? Eh? He's such a fucking fanny. So he is. Eh? That's no fair. Right? Well, them's the breaks, folks. Okay? Anyway, did you enjoy that? Okay? Elena, have already put knee pain question in university. I will be on university tomorrow, my friend. Okay. I hope you enjoyed that. Seriously. Have you liked the video? I can tell how many people are on now. Okay? 161 of you watching. Okay? 70 likes, come on, that's only half. I'm going to put that down to you were so enthralled with the video. You loved it too much that you haven't hit that like button, okay? Please, hit that like button. We're going to be pretty active now on YouTube as well, okay? Right, folks, I will see you soon. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Yes, Mrs. Mac did as well. Okay, take care, folks. Love you all, and you all take care of yourself. Once I can work out how to shut it down. Hit that like button, thumb, just hit it, please. Hit it now. I'm not going to go off until 100 people have hit it. Go on, hit it now, quick, do it. I'm not going, I'm still here. My wife wants to go, look, she can't hold that smile for much longer. Hit it, quick.